Our first panel discussion is about gold refining, and this discussion addresses the challenges and unleashing opportunities in the same. As our tables are being set, let me introduce to you our moderator and our participants for this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the time for this discussion is roughly about half an hour, and this will be moderated by Mr. C. Karthik of Surbi Bullion. The panelists are going to be Mr. Arjun Raghavendra, IIMA, Export of Bullion from India. Understanding the regulatory provisions is his area of expertise. Mr. Suresh Banga, Bright Metal Refiners, and Mr. Manish Goyal of ICICI Bank. Mr. C. Karthik, the moderator, is a dynamic entrepreneur with presence in refining and jewelry, Vice President of IBJA, Tamil Nadu, and he is working tirelessly for the development of Coimbatore bullion market. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I invite on stage, starting with our moderator, Mr. C. Karthik. A very warm welcome, sir. Also giving him company in this panel discussion as Mr. Karthik steers the discussion ahead, Mr. Arjun Raghavendra, Mr. Suresh Banga, and Mr. Manish Goyal. So ladies and gentlemen, as I leave the session in the hand of Mr. C. Karthik, they would be discussing, we've already given you the topic of the discussion, and they would be interacting with the audience in between. Okay, so there is also a presentation in between by Mr. Arjun Raghavendra. Please keep that lined up. It will be a part of the panel discussion.
So good evening to everyone. First of all, let me start by thanking India Gold Conference for this opportunity. I'm going to be keeping this really short. It's just around 5 to 7 slides talking purely about the export policy. And though I'm going to be having Chapter 71 as the widespread, I'm going to be focusing more on the export of gold bars, and that's going to be the precise topic. So now, where do we start with? So the export policy is notified by the DGFT, the Directorate General of Foreign Trade. And once the DGFT is notifying the export policy, which is in Schedule 2, the ITC HS 2018 was notified, and this is the yardstick or the benchmark against which the whole of the export policy in this country is now being coordinated. So against every entry of Chapter 71, there are two columns that are very important. One column pertains to what is the export policy, and the second column pertains to what is the policy condition. So against every 8-digit HS code, you have a policy condition, and then you have export policy to start with. So what does the export policy say for Chapter 71? So Chapter 71, and also for gold bars, which is obviously part of Chapter 71, the policy is blank, which means, I'll explain it further as we move forward. There are no restrictions whatsoever as far as export is concerned. So this removes the first misconception as to whether export of gold bars can actually take place. The answer is yes. There is no policy restriction. So what is the basis of this? The basis of this is the notification, which is 47 of 2015-20, which is dated 31/1/2018. So the notification of Indian Trade Classification Harmonized System of Export Items 2018, Schedule 2 is what the whole of it is about. And the important point here is the basis on which this notification is issued is Section 5 of FTDRA. So the FTDRA 1992 authorizes the DGFT to issue the notification, and that's where we go. Now let's go to the overall export policy. All items which are to be exported from India are classified into free, restricted, and prohibited. So as the name suggests, free items, the policy is free, anyone can import. Restricted items, there are restrictions, there are licenses for export which have to be complied with, and prohibited, they're not permitted. So as far as free is concerned, the export is permitted without a license, and the policy condition, as I was trying to explain previously, is specified only in terms of restricted items. As far as Chapter 71 and gold bars specifically are concerned, there are no policy conditions, and the export of it is free. Now let's move to the most important part of my presentation, which is how do you read the export policy? when you go to the DGFT's website, this is exactly the part which is relevant for Chapter 71. Free exportability actually means, for the sake of convenience, I'll read it out. It says all goods other than the entries in the export licensing schedule, okay, along with the appendices are freely exportable. And the most important line here is goods not listed in the schedule are deemed to be freely exportable without conditions under the FTDRA. So as far as Chapter 71 is concerned, uniformly there is a blend of all the policy conditions and all the export policy, which is directly mandating that all Chapter 71 items are free for export. So we continue with the general notes to the export policy, which is the last part of the presentation. So the general notes to the export policy specifically says, against every specific item, if there is to be a policy condition, it will have to be mentioned against the 8-digit HS code. If it is not mentioned against the 8-digit HS code, then the policy condition will not apply. And similarly, as far as restricted and prohibited items or free items are also concerned, they are further qualified in the DGFT's website. So if you have any further questions, I've kept it really short so that there's enough time for the discussion and questions that follow. I now hand it over to the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Arjun, I think you had covered most of the area which I had prepared. Still, I have some few things.
Sure.
Why has the drawback rate has been notified for the gold bars?
See, actually the problem in India is there has been no export of gold bars at all. We have never had any export of gold bar, because of which the drawback rates have not been notified. The drawback rates have been notified only for 7113, which is gold jewelry. So only gold jewelry is being exported from India till now, and gold bars have not been. So only when this is going to start, the export of gold bars start, then the duty drawback will get notified, and the duty drawback will have to be attractive enough so that the import duty gets, compensated vis-a-vis the duty
Is there
drawback.
any representation done as of now?
Not yet, but I think this is a policy correction that will be worked on, especially in the light of IIBH and the refineries in India being interested in working on gold delivery standards.
I think by this Indian Gold Conference we can represent this issue to the PMO, I guess. And again, what are the policy corrections that are required to promote gold bars exports?
I think one of the most important policy correction is pertaining to the drawback vis-a-vis import duty, because the duty drawback is a very dynamic entity, because the import duty keeps varying. Like last month we had an increase in the customs duty. So whenever the customs duty is increasing, the corresponding duty drawback will also have to be tinkered with to make the whole of this competitive vis-a-vis international markets. Because we are now talking about, let's say, the London pricing and the Indian pricing. If the Indian pricing is at a discounted rate, this would be possible for a refinery to be, carried out only if the duty drawback is going to be competitive. So I think that is the most important policy direction we need to work on.
That we can stable the international price with domestic rates. Always.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Now I ask Mr. Manish to... okay, now Suresh.
Thank you so much.
I request Suresh Bangji to please present your regarding the refinery.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to be among you. Thank you so much. Okay. It's okay? Yeah, sorry. Good evening, all ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to be among you. Thank you so much. Thanks the Federation, thanks the Indian Bullion Association for inviting me. All of us know import of gold and gold ore bar in India is regulated by the government with certain conditions. In the case of import of gold, the government has nominated companies like STC, MMTC, DIL, as everybody is aware about this. I think as of now, among nominated agencies, only DIL is active in import of gold. The RBI has also authorized some of the banks through whom one can import gold. The nominated agencies and the banks are having their own arrangements with different suppliers in the international market for supply of gold as per their requirement. The other source of gold available in the Indian market is through the refiners established in the different part of the country. I think there are about 30 to 35 or 40 refiners registered, but actively there are only 20 to 25 refiners who are importing. But 80% of the total refining is done by the top 10 refiners only, and MMTC PAMP is the lead, taking lead in this, I think. Then the refiners import doré bars against the licenses issued to them for a specific quantity from the office of the DGFT with the restriction on the size of the bar and the purity of the bar. The refiners also collect samples, scraps, old jewelry available in the market to refine. During the first quarter of the last year, that is April to June, not much of the doré was imported due to the pandemic. Now, after easing out the conditions, the industry has bounced back, and in the first quarter of the current financial year, gold doré bar to the tune of approximately 90 metric ton has already been imported. There are certain, and the conditions are like this, it is improving now day by day. There are many challenges if we talk about the challenges for the refiners. First of all is about the supply of doré, which is not easily available and that it is not in the hands of organized sector. To sort out this problem, I would like the nominated banks with the help to help the industry and make some efforts to import more of gold bar instead of the gold. For this, naturally, some amendments have to be made by the banks, by the government, by the RBI, and the agencies there to allow bank to import doré bar for the supply to the actual users, which are refiners here in India. The banks have the means and the expertise, and they have the contacts all over the world, so they can help out the refiners for importing the doré bars. Definitely, RBI and Ministry has to make some changes to allow doré bar by the banks. The other challenge is from the unorganized sector, refining in India. The majority of the gold recycling trade remains with the unorganized, as accredited refiners need to show from where they had sourced the scrap and have to leave out the small jewelers who prefer cash transactions, which cannot be done by the organized sector refiners. Recently, the hike in custom duty on import of gold has given additional advantage to the parallel industry, which is also a challenge to the refiners who are having an organized sector. As of now, there is a difference of 0.65% in the custom duty of gold doré and the gold doré bars. Keeping in view the huge investment required to set up the refinery, land and building, plant and machinery, and the running cost, the difference in duty, 0.65%, is not enough. In spite of all these issues, the industry has tremendous opportunity to grow with the government support by way of, first, to consider some more reduction in the custom duty for import of gold doré bars, which will increase the import of doré than the finished gold. More import of doré bar means it will give a big boost to Make in India drive of Government of India and shall create more job opportunities for the skilled as well as the unskilled workforce. Our country is recognized in the world over for its cost competitive manufacturing, and that will help to the local bodies also. Also, although allow refiners to import, that is my main subject actually, that's what I wanted to force it, allow refiners to import some specific quantity of duty-free gold doré bars out of the license issued to them to sell the gold doré bars to the jewelers in India for export purpose. The government may keep a certain amount of security by way of bond or bank guarantee, which can be released upon furnishing the documentary evidence of export like BRC, shipping bill, whatever documents are required by the government. This move will help the small jewelers to obtain duty-free gold for export who are not having any arrangements or who are not having the resources to have the gold from the nominated banks or nominated agencies. The young generation in India buy the gold jewelry not only as a mean of investment but also as a fashion statement also. The holding period of jewelry will continue to decline as younger customers look for a change in designs more frequently, leading to the higher level of recycling. The country has the potential to emerge as a competitive refining hub if the next phase of bullion market reforms promotes responsible sourcing, export of bars, and consistent supply of doré or scrap. In the end, I request all the refiners to come together, discuss, and take up the related issues with the government for above concerned issues for the growth of the gold refining industry. Thank you so much.
Suresh Bangji, you had given a brief explanation regarding the Dore. But I want to have some clarity on domestic refinery also. But in India, you know that there are only 41 refineries. But there are thousands of unorganized refineries across the country which facilitate jewelers for the generation. Do you think they need some regulation?
Hello, definitely. I recommend there should be a organized sector for each and everything. Yes, that has to be regulated because unorganized sector in any industry is harm to the organized industry. They are suffering, organized sector is suffering due to the fact that there are so many parallel agencies, parallel refiners who are doing, which are not, you can say, good for the health of the industry also.
Then how can we help by appointing the chemist or control themselves by educating without abolishing the
No, I am not in this, you can say, want to say that should be abolished. They should run because they are the main thing, main industry who give the, you can say, boost to the main refiners also.
Yeah.
They can collect the jewelry. They should not melt themselves, but they should give to the person who are in the organized sector, like refiners or who are having the NABL accredited lab or BIS standards, so that it will give a good image to the industry also.
Okay. Now, currently the domination of the corporates is very much. How come we are going to save all these refineries?
Yeah, definitely, we can work. They can also work. We can also work. Organized sector can also work. They can also work. It is between, you can say, understanding, cooperation between both of them.
The monetary basic, technology basic, how come we are going to
Sir,
educate them?
all big sectors are there. All big refiners are there. They will help them out.
Okay.
They will help them out to grow, to refine. For everything, they will help them.
Why there is only 41 refineries in India? Because
Reason being the supply of Dore, as I already discussed in my presentation, the Dore supply is a main issue here in India because that is not in the hand of organized sector.
Okay.
So I recommend, as I said earlier,
why
also,
that's because of the artificial mines or what are the things?
Sir, there are so many issues in this. Reason being the Dore refining supply, as you know, is not in the organized sector all over the world. Rather, I should not say like this, but definitely it is not in the organized sector hands.
Okay.
That's why I was asking, it should be given to the banks with some notification by the government of India, allow the bankers to import Dore bars. They should allot this against the licenses issued to the refiners.
Yeah. Thank you. Hope we do the best. After this meeting, we will represent all this issue to the government.
Thank you so much.
Now I request Mr. Manish ji to represent on GMS.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks to Eventel to have this event organized, and happy to be part of the team here. So I'll be speaking about or discussing, I should say, about gold monetization scheme. So if we look at the briefly talk about the scheme. So gold monetization scheme is basically a scheme which was announced by Government of India to mobilize idle gold. So it is a deposit of physical gold, and the scheme is basically has undergone 2-3 changes during the life of its scheme. So far it was launched in 2014, and now 3 iterations have happened, and every iteration resulted in making more investor friendly. So the tenure is between 1 year to 15 years depending on the type of scheme, and the interest rate is 2.25% to 2.5%, and minimum quantity is just 10 grams of gold. So it is very, very retail focused. However, if we see, the scheme has hardly moved on from the time of its launch. As we speak, it has mostly been concentrated with temples and trusts depositing the gold with the banks. However, the scheme which was actually directed towards recycling idle gold which is lying with the household, that purpose it has not really met with. So if we see, let us delve upon what are the reasons or what could be the hurdles because of which the scheme never took off with the retail investors. So first is basically on coverage. If we see, there are limited points of acceptance of gold since it involves physical deposit by the customer and presence of CPTC. So the coverage has been low. The second is basically on the liquidity. Unlike any financial asset where investors, or specifically if we talk about gold, the investor looks at immediate liquidity. Like even in case of any crisis, the customer can, if he has physical gold, he can just walk into any shop and he can get money for that. However, if we look at GMS, it is lacking on liquidity. There is neither a loan available against the GMS deposit right now, nor there is any kind of like encashment possible, because the scheme requires a minimum 3-year lock-in period if it is in the medium-term and long-term deposit. The other being, it is highly operational intensive and very laborious in nature. Like since it requires physical gold deposit, the customer has to walk into a branch, visit a CPTC, handle physical gold. So it not only consumes time, but it is highly like troublesome for the customer. Other few are like the bank's involvement is more like a franchisee owner, like where the deposit is being mobilized for the government and banks are only acting as a conduit for those deposits and not actually the owners of the deposit. Though there is a short-term scheme, but the short-term scheme is the scheme which is run by the banks on their books, but that has never taken off. I'll come to that at a later stage to delve more into it. And the scheme at inception was more designed to get the household jewelry, but we should understand that household jewelry has got huge emotional attachment and it will never come back for melting and deployment. So the focus of the scheme should be more towards investment gold, which people are holding in the form of physical gold. And lastly, basically the fear of taxman. So these are the main things. However, some of these hurdles as bank we have worked upon, and if we see on the coverage side, as bank we have operationalized more than 100 branches, at least one branch in each state, but that has not really resulted in any meaningful traction. The other one was basically outreach to customers where mailers and branch danglers were put and a little bit of camping was done, but that also didn't yield much result. In terms of digitization, another facility which we got was basically like anywhere deposit, like the customer, irrespective of his location, whether the branch is operational for GMS acceptance or not, but there is a digital interface which has been created where any depositor can reach out to the bank that is interested in a deposit, and the refiner and the logistics partner, that arrangement is there that they reach out and directly pick up the gold from the customer. Having said that and doing so much, but still we are where we were 5 years ago and there is absolutely no traction in this. So can something more be done on this regards? So yes, definitely things are not working. There is work required on each parameter and how to overcome that. So basically on coverage, what we think is that gold is something which is like jewelers or the jewelry fraternity is the one who is point of contact for any retail consumer. So though there was regulations which were published for participation for jewelers and jewelry fraternity to mobilize GMS, but that has not yet become operational. So I feel that is one area where some work needs to be done, and if it's done, that could be one of the parameters which will overcome the hurdle of coverage, where the customers who are day in and day out interacting with the jewelers for their normal physical jewelry related purchases, the same points if they come for become the ecosystem for deposit of GMS, so that would really help a lot. The second thing is in terms of friction, like basically making the process by use of digitization more and more consumer friendly, where we can look at elimination of some of the steps which are manual or manual driven right now. Just to give an example, we have seen how sovereign gold bond and DigiGold has taken off in the recent past, in the last 3-4 years. If at least on an ongoing basis, like the future investment demand which is coming in the form of sovereign gold bond or in the form of digi gold, if those also can be in some way channelized into GMS so that it becomes very convenient for the investor who's wanting to invest in gold to channelize its investment into GMS also. The other one is in terms of liquidity. So that is basically policy direction to be issued for extending loan against collateral of GMS deposit and making short-term deposit attractive for banks as well as investors to operationalize it. So just to talk about short-term deposit which are in the bank's book, right now it is totally non-operational. None of the banks are getting any inquiry from any customer to put their deposit into the bank deposit. The reason being, the government is offering much higher interest rate of 2.25% to 2.5% in medium term and long term. And the banks who have to actually deploy, in some cases, the loan interest rates are around the deposit rates which the government is offering. So no one is ready to offer at much cheaper rates their deposits. The second thing being, the banks are forced to accumulate deposits only in the tenure of 1 year to 3 years. So if that is liberalized and the banks are free to offer the kind of deposit which the customer wants and which provides customer the liquidity, like we do in normal rupee deposits where the customer can have saving accounts or 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, up to 5 years, whatever tenure he wants to put. Similar facility we made available by change in regulations for customers to put their gold deposits with banks. As I mentioned, emotional attachment is something we should only target the investment part of the gold which is held. Awareness, automatically if these first 4 or 5 things happen, then awareness will be there. It will be more of a word of mouth where one person has deposited, that will spread and the banks and the intermediaries like jewelers and all can advertise and have more awareness about the product. And in terms of little bit of tax related clarity in terms of any apprehensions which the depositors have in terms of they placing the deposit. I think once these things are done, we can expect much more traction in terms of deposit mobilization under GMS. Thank you.
Well presented, sir. Sir, actually, again, I'm coming to that point only. You feel that GMS is very successful in our country? As a banker, you can expertise it?
Yeah. So the GMS has not been successful at all. In fact, if we see the fresh deposits from retail is just a trickle, and most of it is only from temple trusts. And for the banks to play a more active role, banks' role in GMS from being a collection agent for the government be changed to banks being a product owner for the deposits. So as I mentioned, like let the banks run the scheme on their own without any tenure restriction, like deposits, savings, like be allowed to open gold savings account, gold term deposits, gold accumulation plans. And the way it will work for the banks is that some portion or the entire portion of it should also be allowed to be qualified as CRR with RBI.
Can a bank do like a ATM center? Can a collection center they can put on a bank by own? Because we are having only 41 refineries, which is not enough to collect all the gold from the country. So that the bank can put some ATM centers like that.
See, like ATM centers, the other way of doing it is basically like, as I mentioned, you have DigiGold.
Yeah.
Similar kind of arrangement can be made where the investors can directly create deposits with banks in terms of gold itself, where the gold can move from refiners.
The public will not believe the third party. The public will believe bankers.
Yes.
So bankers put some ATM centers and melting centers. The awareness will come. So currently there is no awareness on GMS to the public. Now the National Bank only permitted to do all this activity. Why not the...
private banks are also allowed. We also are doing,
Okay.
we have around 250, 300 deposits under GMS.
Okay.
But the quantum is just a tip of the iceberg. It is not even significant enough to be mentioned in terms of quantity of gold.
Because the expense will be around 10 lakhs maximum. So that why the banks can be giving the suggestion to the government to as a collection center.
So banks see, the problem is because of reach. Instead of bank becoming collection centers, if the scheme which was floated where jewelers can become the collection center and pass it on in a digital form to the bank. Bank need not necessarily collect the physical gold. The physical gold may be remaining back with the jeweler or with the refiner, which can then again result into lending to jewelers again. So it becomes a circulation of gold in the domestic economy itself. And for the investor or for the depositor, bank is the counterparty. So for his safety point of view, the gold is with the bank, but actually he deposits with the jeweler. So that is one thing which we seriously need to look upon in operationalizing that. And the other thing is basically to work with refiners and these jewelers to form a kind of a trap at trade arrangement where each entity owns the risk which they are specialized in. Okay. So like jeweler is specialized in assessing the old jewelry when it comes. So he can assume that risk. The refiner can then collect that jewelry from the jeweler and refine it and confirm to the bank about the final purity. Based on
Where to refine? That's the problem. We have only 41 aggregated refiners.
See, right now the amount of gold which is coming, it is not even worth mentioning. The 41 refiners, forget about 41, even one refiner will not have it's not even that much of quantity which is coming.
Already our country is dragged up by the current account deficit. In spite, no one take responsibility to promote this GMS. Who is going to take the call? Whether the bankers or public or industry or government?
I feel it's a joint responsibility of the industry, including the banks.
Okay.
And everyone has to sit together, devise it and make it happen.
And also that the long-term capital should be removed.
It is not there. Long-term capital gain is not there in GMS. So if someone, like in sovereign gold bond, if someone deposits gold in GMS, so and he takes money at the time of maturity, so it's exempt from long-term capital gain. And even the interest which they earn is tax-free.
Also, the currently government is spending a lot in HOID. Why not they are spending in GMS? If they spend on GMS, surely the people will attract.
See, I feel it is like a chicken and egg situation. The scheme, we are focusing on operational hurdles of the scheme, but not addressing the mindset of the customer who is actually going to deposit the gold. So there are two things. One, instead of just focusing our effort in getting the old gold which is already gone into the households, my personal take is that first we should focus on how to retain the investment gold within the financial system, not allow it to get into the private holding at all. So for that, the products should be in such a way that they are depositor friendly. All the conveniences which the physical gold offers should be replicated in the deposit, and the future leakage of physical gold in investment form should be stopped. And once that happens, that will build confidence in the minds of people, and then old will also start coming in after that.
Great, sir. So can we ask for privatization for this scheme? It will be helpful.
It is already like private banks can do it. There is no
private agencies.
Even for private agencies, like I mentioned, jewelers, the scheme allows, but the proper framework to be worked between jeweler, refiner, and bank, that equilibrium is like something which is.
Can we make mandatory? For example, if you're importing 110, you should bring GMS at least for this proportionate.
I don't think it's going to work. See, the economy of restrictions and this thing don't work. Things find their own ways of escaping that. So I think in a free economy, it should be more, we should try to re-engineer the products and make it more investor friendly for it to become successful.
God's grace, if GMS gets success, then we will be the biggest supplier to IIBX. Anyway, thank you. That 7 seconds is left. Thank you, Manish ji and Suresh Bang and Arjun ji. We had okay, any questions from audience side?
Hi. I have two questions. One for Arjun. As you said, and I think the industry knew that the gold bar export was never restricted. What restricted the gold bar export was the value addition. Now, how can we come around it?
No, I was just trying to explain that there is no policy condition which stipulates a value addition, which means there is no requirement, NO in capital letters. no requirement for any value addition for export of gold bars from India.
I agree to an extent what you are saying, but when you go to
No, what I'm saying is a statement
no,
of
no,
fact.
no, no, no. That's
It's
what
not
I'm
my
saying.
opinion.
No, no, no. The statement is correct. You know, that's the problem. You know, when you talk to a government department and when we literally read the books, when you go to DGFT, they are very clear that there is the value addition norm that you have to adhere to. That's what stops the export of gold bar. Gold was allowed since day one, as you correctly said. But we are stuck here with the value addition, and they refer to, in the minted sector, where they
See,
talked about
the
gold
simple
bar.
counter question is, if a value addition is required, let me, for example, buy your argument. The consequent question is, where does it say so in the law?
That's what I'm saying. So there is a notification which talks about on the coins and bar. So when they talk about coins and bar, they refer bar to the bar that we are talking about exporting.
No, there's only one notification which I've mentioned in my presentation. Okay, I mean, we'll take this,
So we'll come to you with
yeah, there's absolutely no doubt, no misconception, nothing.
So I will share that with you. Secondly, with respect to Manishji, under GMS, there are three: short term, medium term, and the long term.
Right,
Medium, long term, I agree that you don't have to handle anything.
right.
What stops you from marketing the short term? There is no restriction, there is no guideline from the government. You can do whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah. So short term, there are two shortcomings in that. One thing is it says stipulates minimum tenure of 1 year and maximum tenure of 3 years. So it ties down the bank's tenure of accepting the deposit. Second, which is the main issue, is the commercial viability which the banks can offer in terms of interest rates. So the interest rates which work, the range in which those interest rates work, the retail investors don't come at all. Means we don't receive any queries from any investor for short-term deposit. They all go for medium and long-term because they get much higher interest rate over there.
You can still offer a much higher rate than 2.5% for the short term. You can still make good money out of it.
We'll see.
Well,
If RBI allows for at least some portion, I don't say that 100%, because if they allow 100%, then the very purpose of recycling gold will be lost. But if they suppose even allow 25% or 50% of the mobilization to be kept as CRR, so that would give us a big fillip in terms of making it commercially viable.
That makes sense. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask, this opinion on this chapter 71. We have Mr. Vivek Vijay here on the export of bullion, silver bullion.
Yeah, no, I think probably that's something which is very interesting. India being a net importer, so there is no rule to prevent exports. But as such, as a domestic consuming country, I think our endeavors have been always to fulfill the domestic market. But a chance given with value addition maybe in coins and other products like bars, etc., we should consider. The domestic refiners should consider that.
Check. All right. So we are concluding this session, ladies and gentlemen. Can we give a resounding round of applause to each one of our panelists? Big thank you to Mr. Karthik for so beautifully conducting and steering the session. One final duty of any chairperson is to present a memento to each one of the participants. But before I invite each one of our speakers to stand up, from the previous session, we still have a memento to go out to Mr. Debashish Bhattacharjee. And do we have you in the house, sir? Or did he just step out again? Oh, we are missing him like a Shubh Muhurat. All right. So in that case, once again, requesting Mr. Karthik, sir, one final duty, presenting a memento to each one of our speakers. Can we please have the mementos on the stage, starting with Mr. Arjun Raghavendra. Everyone, please stay with us. Our next panelists are ready and raring to go. Let's get them up here, please. Starting with Mr. Arjun Raghavendra. A big thank you to Mr. Suresh Banga. Thank you, Mr. Banga, for that very interesting insight. And thank you, Mr. Manish Goyal, for your very candid views on the entire gold monetization. Let's give him a huge round of applause. A rare candid banker. And finally, Debashish sir is here in the house. Sir, we have a memento for you. It's been waiting to come over to your hands. Requesting Mr. Karthik to do the honors. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I invite you to take your place in the audience, everyone. Thank you so much. One group picture, our photographers would like to have one with you. Having said that, while these gentlemen get their final picture, let me start inviting our next set of panelists. Gentlemen and ladies, this is the amazing world of Indian silver. All right. I would like to request Mr. Vatsa from Eventel to present a memento to Mr. Karthik. So there's one for you too. Requesting all the guests to stand by. Thank you, Mr. Karthik. And by the way, for each one of you that is sitting here and hasn't had a chance to have a closer look at the memento, if I, as a presenter, had a personal list of one of the most ingenuous mementos of the year, this Chennai memento would be right there on the top of the list with the filter coffee. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen.